Hello, friends. Welcome back. It's a great day in South Florida, and I got a new microphone, and I forgot to put the wind cover on it. So I'm hoping that the audio quality is good, but there is some wind. There may be some background noise, and if it's terrible audio quality, then you'll probably never see this video. But I wanted to share a story, and I'm going to put my sunglasses on. Not because I don't want to make eye contact, but because it's bright. And although it is overcast and it looks like it is going to rain here soon, I wanted to get out, get some vitamin D, get into nature for a little bit, and share a story. I saw something in the news today which really triggered me. And this is going to be an uncomfortable subject, and I'm not intentionally trying to disturb anybody, but I think this is something that needs to be talked about. And I think, and I hope that by talking about it, by creating a dialogue around it, by being open and transparent about it, that maybe it'll get some more attention and maybe it will change the culture of how some things are done. But this morning, I saw a news article, and of course, this stuff happens in Florida, which is where I'm located. But the headline news across the Associated Press is elderly man shoots wife and himself at a Florida assisted living facility. Now, obviously, that is horrible. That is a tragedy. That is, a murder suicide is not a good thing, and I'm not making light of that at all. I'm sure their family is devastated, and my thoughts and prayers go out to their family, if they even have a family. They could be alone. They could be dying alone. They could be completely isolated. And so this story is going to be, and it's not even a story, that's the headline news, but what I want to talk about is being abandoned and left to die in a nursing home. And my experience with that is probably similar to a lot of people. When I was younger, my grandmother on my mother's side, when she got elderly and she got infirm and she was unable to take care of herself, she resisted. And this was a much different generation, and I think families operated a lot differently back then. But there was a concerted effort by all of her children to keep her independent for as long as possible. But eventually, she did succumb to cancer. She did pass away, and I loved my grandma. I mean, I really loved my grandma. She was the best, and she was in a different state. So I was young, and almost all of that experience was kept secret to me. I knew she was getting older, but it was like the dirty little secret that nobody wanted to talk about. They wanted to, I guess, protect me from the reality of aging, the reality of her passing, and I don't know if that was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. I'm sure it was incredibly traumatic for my mother. I'm sure it was incredibly traumatic for my grandmother. But I know at least I suspect their intent was to protect me from the obvious decline she was going through and the suffering she was experiencing, and they wanted to protect me from all of that. So that's just what happened, right? And so one day I came home from school, I learned she had passed, and that was sad, but it wasn't totally unexpected. That's the way life goes sometimes. And I share that story just to give some background, because my other grandma on my father's side lived a lot longer. She was younger than my other grandma, and I was an adult when she started to become less capable, less able to take care of herself. And she did maintain her independence for a long time, but at some point she required help. And what's shocking to me, and I don't think most people think about these things. I don't think most people are even aware that these things are happening until they experience it themselves. But I know that my father specifically did a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of homework, a lot of due diligence to find the best care facility for her. And that's where she went. And so she went into this assisted living facility, which it was incredible, because if you looked online at the marketing for this assisted living facility, and I'm not going to name the place, it looked like a country club. It looked like it was amazing. It looked like it was this active adult playground or camp for folks that are in their elder years and are declining, but like they really seem to have a tremendous quality of life and tremendous social outlets, and honestly, it looked like a lot of fun. But that was the marketing. The reality of this place was horrific. When I went to visit her, it was like entering a prison. And the staff was so, and I know this is, I hope it's not like this everywhere, but unfortunately, the small sample size of experiences that I've had with these types of places has not been good. They've all been quite similar. The staff is not particularly friendly. The staff is not particularly helpful. The staff seems to vehemently dislike everybody involved in the process. And so the marketing made it seem like this place was great, but when I got there, it really felt like I was entering into a jail or an institution. It was not a happy place. It was not a good energy. It was not happy vibes. And that was before I even got into the facility. I'm talking about checking in. And I also know how to advocate for my grandmother. So I, of course, was going to go in there and be kill them with kindness, be as friendly and as nice and as helpful and offer gifts and really pour it on to the staff, because I want to ensure that they know that my grandmother has a family that loves her and is concerned about her and is going to be there to hold them accountable. I want them to know that she is loved. And didn't matter. They didn't care. They ignored that completely. They were annoyed that somebody was there disrupting their schedule. At least that was my experience. And over time, after I got past the initial shock of going to visit her in this place, I got to see firsthand what it was like for other residents. And to be clear, when you get to be of a certain age, when I get to be of a certain age, I don't want to be a burden for my family. I am planning now in advance to have the resources to, there's a bug, to be able to fund that for myself and not have to burden anybody with that. But I hope that when it is my time, I hope that my family will be in a position, my children will be in a position, and our relationships will be so strong that they'll want me to be with them. But if in any way, shape, or form I think I'm a burden, well, I'm not going to do that to anybody. Anyhow, getting back to the story. So as I would go there to visit her, and I would get to see what it's like on a day-to-day basis in this assisted living facility, it terrified me. There were patients that were in this facility that were completely abandoned. They were, depending, again, I don't want to speak in too broad of a stroke, but there were many residents of this inmates of this assisted living facility that were not really capable of mobility. So they were in their wheelchairs and they were facing a corner in some instances. They were stuck in their beds. They were in the hallway. They were completely left alone. And many of these folks were suffering from dementia or I don't know what, but many of them, not all, but many of them were just screaming for help, crying for help, terrified. They had no idea where they were, and nobody was paying any attention to them. There was no family visiting for lots of these people. There was no staff that really gave it a shit at all about them. And many of these people were sitting in their own shit. Many of these people looked like they needed to be cleaned and washed and paid attention to, but it was pretty clear nobody cared about them. And that's what I got to see. That's what I experienced. And it was devastating. It was heartbreaking. And it really made me sad. Now, I don't want to have I'm not trying to bring anybody down or make anybody sad. But that was my experience, and that's what my grandmother got to experience. And yes, we went to visit her often, and yes, we did everything that we could to make her comfortable and give her the best chance of having a good experience with the staff there. And she probably had a better experience than most. It still wasn't great. Most people don't have the money to fund the type of help or the type of lifestyle that they want as they're declining, as they're passing away, as they're getting ready to enter the next phase of, I was going to say life, but really death, to cross over to the other side. And the reason I'm sharing this is, well, obviously I saw this news article where the elderly man shot his wife and then killed himself. That's not uncommon, unfortunately. And it's sad, but it's not uncommon. And the reason I'm using this as a talking point is because the opposite version of that, the most beautiful passing that I've ever seen, was not reserved for a human. It was not reserved for an elderly mother or father or grandmother or grandfather or aunt or uncle or brother or sister or any, it's not available to a human. But when my dog passed, it was the most beautiful, loving, kind thing I've ever experienced. And it was the most loving thing I've ever experienced. It was heartbreakingly sad, but my dog was sick. He was clear. Now, to be clear, the dogs that you may have seen in any of my videos, that's obviously not the dog I'm talking about, but our family dog got up there in years, and he was, 15 years old, and a beautiful dog, a beautiful black Labrador Retriever. And his name was Maddox. And he was a good boy. He was so much fun, such a good, loving, kind dog. But when he got to the point where he could no longer walk and no longer live anymore, it became obvious. And so we did the responsible thing. We went to the vet. We tried to do everything we could to extend his life. But when we realized that that was a zero-sum game and it wasn't fair to the dog, we knew we had to put him down. And that's always heartbreaking. It's always extremely sad. And it was. But what the dog got that my grandmother didn't, and most of these people who are left and abandoned to die alone in these nursing homes or assisted living facilities, they don't get the dignity that the dog did, that our dog did. They're just ignored and left to die in fear, in terror, in panic, in delusion, in just a horrible way. And I know that because I've seen it with my own eyes. But yet, my dog was surrounded by his family. And we got to have a private moment in a separate room. And we got to spend time with him. And I'm going to start crying. We got to pet him and comfort him and sing to him and kiss him and hug him and everything. And then he gently was given a sedative, and he drifted asleep. He drifted into sleep, and we all were there. I was making direct eye contact with him, and I think so. But so was everybody else. And then they gave him the final push of the medicine, and he gently passed. And yeah, it was sad, so I'm not going to minimize that. But it was so beautiful And it was so peaceful, and it was so kind, it was so loving. And yeah, everyone was crying, and we walked out of there and we were all very sad. But as soon as we walked out of the office, I looked at my father, and I couldn't even help myself, and I said, how is it possible that our dog just got the most beautiful send-off to the other side and Grandma didn't? It's so unfair. And it really was so unfair. And it really is so unfair. And it really sucks that, this elderly man felt his only option was to shoot his wife and then kill himself rather than die with dignity and have the ability to control or choose how he wants to exit this world. And I don't have, look, this is not, I do not support suicide. I'm not suggesting that, in fact, nobody kill themselves. That is not what this video is about at all. But I do think a conversation about elderly people and their ability to make decisions for how they want to pass is something that should be discussed and should be preserved and should be allowed. I don't think that my dog should have the ability to die with such... Well, actually, that's not true. Of course I wanted my dog. Of course I want my dog to be surrounded by love and family when he passes and when he did pass. But I also think that my grandmother also has that right and also should have that ability and that privilege. And yet it's not something that anybody's talking about, but it's horrible, and it makes me sad. Now, I don't want this to be a downer. What I learned from that and what I've done since is I volunteer, right? So there are times where, especially during the holidays, it's easy for me to remember that it's nice to do things like that, and I can go and volunteer during Thanksgiving and serve meals or just go. I mean, if you really want to do something nice and you want to feel, this is the easiest thing to do and will 1000% make me or you feel a million times better than you might feel already. Go to an assisted living facility and just go talk to an old person who is sitting in a room by themselves and have a conversation. Read to them. Ask them about their life. Ask them to tell you their life story and make a friend, because it doesn't cost any money to do that. And I could tell you that these folks, they will love it so much, and you will benefit so much from that experience, or I will benefit so much from that experience, that it's almost a shame that it's not like a requirement that everyone should be forced to do. But again, this is the United States of America, where everyone has the right to do what they want to. But if I had my way, I would certainly make a push that would be some sort of community service that I think everybody would need to do, because it's so important. And that's it. That's all I got. I hope you enjoyed my story. I hope this audio is good. But it looks like it's going to start raining here, and I'm looking forward to some sunshine later. But if nobody's told you today that they love you, well, just know I do. And I'm going to go out there, win the day, win the week, win the year. Hope you do too. And I'll look forward to seeing you on my next video.